Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna be doing my October wrap up and I have around 10 books that I have read in October. Fortunately or unfortunately, I do not live in a country where Halloween is a tradition and I did not plan my books to be spooky themed. So you will see books in a mixture of genre that I more or less enjoyed. But that does not mean there won't be any spooky books. I did squeeze in a few, so watch till the end. First off, I have The Midnight Library, written by Matt Haig. In this book, we get to see Nora, who is not very happy with her life and is just not interested in living anymore. The Midnight Library gives her a chance to change her life with infinite possibilities based on her regrets, like what she failed to do or what she could have done with every choice in her life, with her career, boyfriend, and whatnot. I'm not telling how she gets to the Midnight Library because that will be a huge spoiler. So, with endless possibilities, Nora learns how to make decisions without regrets and how to stand by her decisions. So, we initially see Nora in a very bad place. So, there are a bunch of trigger warnings you should be aware of, like depression, suicidal thoughts, suicide attempt, and drugs. This book was a four-star read for me because I really liked the concept of the Midnight Library and how philosophies of life and fantasy blended. So, the next book I have is The Reckless Afterlife of Harriet Stoker, written by Lauren James. So, yes, here, as the title suggests, Harriet dies tripping from an abandoned building. After dying, instead of being gone, she gets stuck in the afterlife in the building along with other ghosts who had died there earlier and never left. So, here in the afterlife, each ghost is given with a power, and there are good ghosts and bad ghosts based on how and for what purpose they use their gifts. So, Harriet is naive and arrogant, who is convinced that she could use her power to reach out to humans, and in the process, she causes major destruction and chaos, putting all the other ghosts' afterlife in danger. I can't say life, right? So, it's afterlife. The idea of afterlife was good, but except for few places, there was no spookiness in the story. This was supposed to be my first spooky read of this month, and I was not spooked at all. I rated this book a 3 out of 5. The next I have is The Cardigans, written by Cole McCade. This is the first episode in the season 1 of Criminal Intentions series, and that is because the author has categorized this series as seasons and episodes. And as of today, the first season has 13 episodes, and this book is the first episode. I picked this book because one of my Goodreads friends had read it recently and I was intrigued by the plot. So, this is a detective story where a string of queer men gets murdered and the case falls to Malcolm. He is forced to work with a partner, which is Yoon, and he is not okay with it. All the dead men were former boyfriends of one guy, which makes him an obvious suspect. I think I forgot to tell that both Malcolm and Yoon are queer themselves. So, two queer detectives solving the string of murders of queer men before anybody else get ending up dead is the story. So, this was not a big book and it was a fast paced read, which I kind of liked. It was not that memorable enough for me to continue the season. I think I rated this a 4 star. I'm not entirely sure. Next, I have is Mexican Gothic, written by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I think I pronounced it wrong, I'm not sure. Anyway, a lot of people read this book in October, including me. So, at least many I know of. In this book, Noemi is sent to High Place by her father after receiving a disturbing letter from her cousin. So, her goal was to check on her cousin's health and see if she is treated for her illness properly or not. She gets stuck in this creepy house in High Place, which is her cousin's in law's house, as an unwelcome guest trying to find out what exactly was wrong with her. When she figures out what exactly is happening, she is too deep in trouble that she might never escape from that hellhole. This was a good candidate for spooky read because the book grew steadily creepier, and towards the end things became gross and unsettling, like very very bad. By the end of the book I was so creeped out that there is a particular food item that will remind me of this book quite a lot for a long time, and definitely not in a good way. This was a very good book. I rated this book 4 stars. So the one I'm gonna talk about next is something I should have read a long time ago, and for some reason I didn't. So don't be mad, guys. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, written by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Yeah, my bad. This is a beautiful, beautiful book where a not so renowned journalist, Monique, gets to write the memoir of one of the best actors of all time, Evelyn Hugo. Like the title suggests, Evelyn had married 7 times in this book, and she has her reasons for all of them that entwines her private and social life beautifully. After finishing this book, I could not believe that Evelyn was not a real person because the characters and lives revolved around her, and her entry to Hollywood and her sustenance were all so real. This could be related to anybody who is trying to maintain a persona and sustain in a very cunning and competitive environment. I absolutely loved this book, and it will be one of my all time favorites. 5 stars were not at all enough for this beautiful book. If you have not read this book yet, you're missing out on a lot. Go pick it up immediately. I think I have talked about 5 books now, so 5 down and 5 more to go. Next, I have The Shadows, written by Alex North. I have read The Whisper Man before, so I was really eager to pick this book. The story revolves around Paul, who is returning to his hometown after 25 years to see his sick mother. Because 25 years ago, one of his friends was gruesomely murdered by 2 other friends of his. After all these years, similar kind of murders happen again, and there is only Paul who knew what happened then, and only he could be able to understand what is happening now. The story is narrated in 2 timelines with 2 POVs. So the past timeline is 25 years ago, where Paul is a teenager and getting acquainted and involved with the killers. In present timeline, there is 2 POVs, one of Paul's who gets tangled yet again, and another, a homicide detective who is trying to solve these crimes. I listened to the audiobook over a course of several days, and though the pace was slow, the story and concept were intriguing. I would rate this book a 3.5 out of 5, and I kind of liked The Whisper Man more than this. So, yeah, that's that. The next 2 books are so popular and most loved as Evelyn Hugo that I should have read a long time ago, but I read them now anyway, so that should count for something. The first one is The Nightingale, written by Kristen Hanna. Yes, I did not read this before. So the plot is set in 1939 France, where there is war and Nazis are attacking France, terrorizing people and killing Jews. So we get to read the stories of 2 sisters, Vian and Isabel, who are different, like very, very different. Vi is living a peaceful life with her husband and daughter, and Isabel, a rebellious teenager, being reckless and immature. Vi's husband is forced to fight, and Isabel gets sent to Vi's place. Both Vi and Isabel contribute towards war, suffering, and sacrificing in their own way. There is a teeny tiny love story squeezed amongst all this war and chaos. This book was not without flaws, but even with those flaws, I still loved the book. I can't handle extreme sufferings and tragedies, so for me, this book was simply perfect. I rated this book a 5 out of 5. I know many would have a contradictory opinion on this, but still, this was actually a very good book. Here comes the next popular book, Don't Scold Me Yet, Radio Silence, written by Alice Osman. Again, I should have read this a long time ago, but better late than never, right? Here, the story revolves around Frances, who is a nerd who thinks she knows what she has to do to make her life successful, which does not involve any living actually. One day she gets to know the person behind her favorite podcast, for which she has been a crazy fangirl drawing fan arts all over. They form a beautiful friendship and collaborate in making the podcast with her art and voice. So they face the threat of getting their identities exposed, which drives a wedge in their relationship. I love this book so much because majority of the contemporary novels that are based on this theme have love as a base, but this book deals with friendship and relationship and family. Frances' mother was a piece of art that everyone would wish for. Though there are ups and downs in the story, it has a happy, satisfying ending. Indirect implication of depression, suicidal thoughts, parental abuse, physical abuse, animal abuse are some of the major trigger warnings that you should be aware of. And this was another 5-star read for me. So I have two books in place 9 because they belong to a series and I do not want to put them in separate places. I finally picked up Farsi trilogy and finished the first two books in October. This series is about Fitz Chivalry, who is an illegitimate son of Prince Chivalry, who gives up the throne, making Fitz a target. In the first book, Assassin's Apprentice, we see a 6-year-old boy being sent to the king, and the king taking him under his wing, making him promise his loyalty to the king and the kingdom. By the end of the first book, Fitz will still be a teenage boy, so there is no much action here. But we get to see him learn and grow, accepting his position and understanding his role in the kingdom's future. In the second book, Royal Assassin, there is threat against the king in waiting and to the kingdom itself, and whatever Fitz learned and trained for in the first book comes in handy. Born of royal blood, he himself has some abilities that he finally gets to explore, which brings more purpose and meaning to his life. The book was published in 1996 and it is not fair to expect anything fancy. So, if you go with minimum expectations, I mean, if you are a reader of medieval fantasy or the latest modern fantasy series, if you go with minimal expectations, you would actually end up loving the writing of this book and the world and the characters. For me, both these books were 5-star reads. It was a slow read, but I still loved them. I have started the final book and it will mostly be in my November wrap up. So, the last and the final book I have is The Sundown Motel, written by Simone St. James. The story is narrated in two timelines. The past timeline is set in 1982 with Vivian Delaney's POV, and the present timeline in 2017 with Carly Kirk's POV. Carly, after her mother's death, drops out of college and goes in search of her missing aunt Vivian, who was never found since 1982. Though she has never met Viv, Carly visits the town Viv had last stayed in and, with little information she gets hold of, tries to piece together what had happened in the weeks prior to her disappearance. Carly's missing case investigation turns out to be something huge that uncovers several other crimes. There are paranormal factors in the story that will play a major role in solving these crimes. So, this book was another perfect Halloween read. I felt the ending to be rushed and I rated this a 4-star. I have not read any of other Simon's book to compare this to, but I really like this book. I will probably take The Broken Girls soon. That's the end of my October wrap up, and I have a bunch of books planned for November, which I will hopefully read and come up with a wrap up. Opening rounds of Goodreads Choice Awards for 2020 are open for voting, and the voting closes by 10th November. Go vote for your favorite book of this year if you haven't already. I will continue to make spoiler-free review videos and other recommendation videos apart from wrap-ups, and if you have any book recommendations for me, please leave them in the comments below. If you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Keep reading books until the next video. This is Darshini signing off.